A hidden status effect? That's right. Flaming Espinas brings the first glaive with a double effect in Monster Hunter Rise, and it's honestly too much fun to not try out. So grab a Warbug, and let's head on out. When I first heard this glaive had a dual effect, I immediately knew that I'd be testing it out. This video will provide one of the ideal builds for this weapon, and I'm also going to explore a second build for the Chameleos Poison Glaive, so be sure to check the timestamps for whatever you're interested in. Taking a look at the Flaming Espinas Glaive, the Kaktusspringen, it's got a low raw, so naturally it's not the most ideal insect glaive. While we love our elements, insect glaive definitely is a more raw focused weapon, but honestly who cares at this point. This build I put together is super fun and still outputs amazing damage. The Kaktusspringen has decent natural purple sharpness, not amazing but it's not bad either. 40 fire, which is pretty good, and 15% natural affinity, meaning with most builds, you can probably exclude any use of critical eye. Great slots for the weapon with a 4-1-1 jewel slot, very ideal as we now need more 4 slots, and a level 3 rampage deco. Kinsect is at level 14, which I've mentioned in my previous Kinsect comparison video. That's really good for basically assistant powder Kinsects. So overall a very fun looking weapon. Before we jump into the build, I do want to put a disclaimer here. As usual, I have augmented my armor pieces, so you will need to play around with your own builds. Choreografting has made it a little bit more complex, but hopefully my builds are there as a guide for you guys to attempt to make, and then you might just need to rearrange some of the skills depending what you roll. So jumping in, the armors that we're using for this are the Gold Raytheon Helmet, the Silver Athlos Chest Piece, the Risen Chameleos Gloves, Violet Mizu Coils, and the Shagura Greaves. The Greaves come with Bloodlust, which if you aren't aware, does inflict damage upon you when you're attacking the monster, but once you attack enough times to cleanse yourself of the Magala virus, you are clear for it for about a minute. During the infliction, you gain extra attack for more damage. Once you cleanse yourself, you lose that attack bonus, but you gain 20% affinity for 1 minute. I'm a big fan of this skill because just no matter what for me, whatever phase I'm at, I'm getting some benefits out of it, either attack or affinity, both of which are helping my DPS, aside from the health loss, which I'm okay with. This gameplay is very exciting to me. If you aren't a fan of Bloodlust though, there are a few other legs that you can use with similar skill slots. Now this build does have level 5 Agitator built into it, but 5 isn't necessarily particular since we do have a few skills that give us extra affinity. I utilized the Violet Mizu Coils for straight 3 Agitator, and then I actually rolled a 4th Agitator on the same piece. Now yes, I know, I hit the jackpot with this one. It literally just happened on my 6th or 7th roll. I was in a call on my community on Discord and we all freaked out. So extremely lucky roll here. So again, if you roll something else, you might be able to replace another level 2 deco on the build with Agitator. I also rolled another Agitator on the legs. That one's a little bit more doable. I've seen other community members get that just because these Greaves are a lower level Greaves, so they have a higher chance to get better skills. After that, Fire Attack 5 is on the build as well. I utilized the Silver Athlos Chest Piece, which instantly gave me 3 fire up. I rolled a 4th on it as well, which isn't actually that hard, and then I added a 5th jewel to the Glaive slot. The Glaive actually has 2 single slots, so if you don't roll the extra fire attack, you can just add 2 single slot jewels here to the Glaive. The reason I wanted to try the chest piece was for the Element Exploit skill. Now Element Exploit does add 10% element damage on element weak zones, so yes, this build really leans into element, probably more than it should, so it's mostly ideal against monsters with really good fire hit zones, which unfortunately is not a lot of endgame monsters because, I don't know, Capcom likes fire monsters, so we have lots of fire weapons and no monsters to use them on because game balance or something. With this chest, we also get 1 critical element, and I added the critical element jewel plus for 2 extra jewels to max it out. Critical boost was all jewels added, and weakness exploit was 1 jewels and a Wex 2 talisman. I've gotten several of these Wex 2 talismans after 700 hours, so I'm hoping you guys have got at least 1. If not, hopefully you've got something else with 2 level 2 skills to replace it. Now let's take a look at the more unique skills. There's a lot that's been added to this build from newer armors coming from Title Update 1 and 2. The Gold Raytheon Helm and Risen Chameleos give us 2 levels of Foray. Now Foray is a skill which activates when a monster is afflicted with a status. For this build, the hidden poison ability of Flaming Espinas allows us to utilize this skill, which is why I've been having so much fun with it. Activation of Foray gives you plus 10 attack raw power on top of the flaming element and also the raw damage that we already have. On the Chameleos gloves, you can then add the new Haze level 1 jewel and then add one more to the coils to achieve level 3 Chameleos blessings. This skill greatly extends the duration of any poison effect, meaning Foray stays active for much longer, giving you that plus 10 raw attack for a longer period of time. Additionally, in the 4 slot of the glaive, I added a hard poison deco, making poison buildup up to 20% extra and adding 5 bonus to the hidden poison value. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the original poison value of this glaive was. It was rumored data mined some information that it was around 24 for the glaive, but I'm not 100% sure. But from my testing, it does feel like it's mid-20s. It's much better than the Lucent glaive, but it's not as good as the Chameleos glaive, so around mid-20s does make sense. So Chameleos Blessing and Foray work really well together on this build, and of course this is all extra on top of the glaive's fire element damage. Just for fun, I want to lean into this a little bit more, so using the Gold Raytheon Helm, I added 2 levels of status trigger. This skill activates on a perfectly timed dodge, and then all subsequent hits apply abnormal statuses, including poison for 8 seconds. For the glaive, this is actually a very narrow window. It's a little hard to activate, but it's not like impossible. If you know the monster's attack patterns pretty well, you can pick the attacks that you know really well to dodge, and then you'll be able to activate it and get some poison damage in. The skill does activate from aerial dodges and eye-framing roars, and also you don't need to dodge the attack. If you click the dodge button at the right time but still get clipped, sometimes it can still activate and you can get right in and get some damage in before timer runs out. On top of this, we also have Adrenaline Rush on the build from the coils. So perfectly timed dodges not only activate status trigger, but they also activate Adrenaline Rush, which gives you 10 plus raw attack for 1 minute. Absolutely fantastic combination here for these skills. Moving on, the new skill that we have that's part of this build is the Build Up Boost skill. Now I did talk about the details of this in my Title Update 2 overview video, but essentially this skill adds 10% to the true attack that you see when you hit a monster on any attack that actually inflicts the abnormal status. So again, thanks to Flaming Espinas, any hits that actually do the hidden poison, yes, this weapon will benefit from this skill as well. So you're not only getting all this extra damage from the perks that we previously mentioned, but now our damage in general goes up for every poison hit. That's what I kind of love about this skill, is that even when you get to the end of the hunt, when poison tolerance becomes so high that you can't activate Foray and Chameleos' Blessing, at least Build Up Boost will now be active to give you that extra damage to keep your damage higher from all those poison hits, and it doesn't feel like you're wasting bringing a poison weapon to the end of a hunt. So overall, all these new skills really blend well together and it's so much fun. You will definitely still see some big numbers using this build, and it's a really fun glaive to kind of mess around with. I really wish we had some more ice monsters to use this on. Hopefully Title Update 3 brings us more, but even so, it's a really fun weapon that really shines on some of the monsters that we have. One of the last things I want to mention for this build, since I'm running Bloodlust, you will need at least 1 Coalescence to get that extra damage. If your Talisman has at least a level 2 slot, add it in. I have a 4 slot on my actual charm, so with this new update, we got the Phoenix Plus jewels, so I was able to gain 2 levels of Coalescence. In terms of sharpness for the build, I will say that this build is lacking a little bit of sharpness. Because we already had Razor Sharp on the legs, I added a level 4 Razor Jewel Plus to the chest piece that gives us 2 extra pieces of Razor Sharp and maxes the skill out. I also augmented the weapon for 1 sharpness boost, but even with that on, anomaly monsters, I did find that I still had to sharpen a little bit if you attack a lot. So I just threw on a grinder level 3 wherever I could. That one came from 1 augmented roll on the Gold Raytheon helmet and 2 others as single jewels. You may or may not be able to fit this in depending on the rolls on your armor pieces, so see if you can try to get it from one of the augments. I also have augmented my gloves with a single level of resentment. Again, not entirely necessary. It does help when it's combined with Bloodlust, since for half the hunt you will be taking some damage from Bloodlust, so any resentment levels are nice, but if you get any other skills that are helpful to you, definitely keep those. And finally, we have Attack Boost 4. I just kind of filled up the rest of the slots to have enough for the percent boost. So yeah, that's it for this build. Again, not too many monsters that this can work super well against. Ghost Harag, Luna, even Gore Magala to some extent are great monsters for this weapon. Now, if you want a similar fun build but without the fire, basically a glaive that's more applicable to other monsters, running the Chameleos Veilcaster is a great option. I tweaked this build just to fit for the Veilcaster by simply changing the chest piece and the legs. The chest I changed to the Archfiend chest, and I swapped my legs for another Shagura legs that had an augmented Master Touch on it. Again, this isn't entirely necessarily, honestly, if you have other skills. Again, choreocrafting makes for different ways for us to achieve similar builds. And in this build, I had a lot of space, so you don't really need this Master Touch roll. But with this change, you really just need to rearrange some of the skills. I took the level 4 Coalescence off of the charm and I replaced it with the Hard Venom. This glaive doesn't come with a 4 slot like the Flaming Espinas, so we had to put that poison build up somewhere on the build. On the gloves, I put the Mastery Jewel Plus for full Master Touch, but again, if your charm doesn't have the 4 slot, put the Hard Venom on here and use 2 Razor Sharp Jewels instead to conserve some jewel space. I moved the Coalescence Phoenix Jewel to the glaive itself, dropping it down 1 level compared to the Flaming Espinas build, but that's okay since level 1 is all you really need for Coalescence. If you get some good rolls on the armor piece, again you can make some space, but on this build, you should be able to fit everything that you need. A reminder, I rolled the Agitator on the Violet Mizu coils, so I had space here to add a stamina skill, but if you don't have that, just fill the slots with the Agitator skill. So that's about it for the Poison Glaive builds. Super fun to run. I absolutely love them. The new skills tie so well together, so it's just really nice to play, hunt monsters, and to see those skills all come together. Let me know in the comments, guys, if you guys give these builds a try or if you have variations. I'm sure there's a lot of variations out there, so even if these builds don't work out for you, check down below and others might have some other recommendations. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate the time you guys take for these videos. So until next time, stay safe, be happy, and keep hunting. Sky Sensei is out.